Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, and it's time for Winterreise Wednesday. Yes, this is the sequel to my big repertoire video on best recordings of Schubert's Der Winterreise, the Winter Journey, the world's most depressing song cycle. And because so many of you had so many favorites that were outside of the select 20 or 40 or so that I picked, we're going to be talking about some of those extra versions because, you can never have enough, especially when the music is as depressing as this. So, where are we? Yes, today we have a Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau retrospective, a selection that traces his career in Winterreises because he recorded it at least, well, some of you, I think, 8 times? 7 times? I mean, it depends because there were his major label recordings, which were on EMI and Deutsche Grammophon and Sony and Philips. And then there were his other recordings, like on Orfeo, which he owned, by the way. That was his label. And some other things. So, I mean, he was all over the place with Die Winterreise. I mean, because you could never have enough. And but I've selected 3 recordings that really trace his career and the evolution of his artistry, I think rather tellingly. Now, some people despise Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau. I have no idea why. You know, I can understand where there's, personal preference comes into it. You may not like his voice or whatnot, but he was a very, very great singer. He really was. And he did more to promote the cause of Lieder than just about any other singer of the 20th century in terms of his range of repertoire and his ability to project a song text. I mean, he was fabulous at it. He had crystalline diction. You could practically transcribe the words of the Lied from the way he sings it. And because of that, some people have taken umbrage, let's put it that way, at his tendency to resort to a kind of Sprechstimme, a sort of spoken, sung speech, spoken singing, if you want to call it that. And in his later phase, when his voice started to dry out, it became sort of a bark, like arf, woof, woof. He would sort of bark out the text. That really annoyed some people. I'm not particularly fond of it, I have to say. I remember, I first encountered it not in Lieder, because, Lieder I had no truck with when I was younger, but in his recording of Das Lied von der Erde with Leonard Bernstein. He did an earlier one with Paul Kletzky, which was quite beautiful. But even by the time he got to the Bernstein one, which is in the early 60s, his voice was still in great shape, really in great shape. It was on Decca. In the Song of Beauty, when the young men come stomping by on horseback, and he just shouted his way through that middle section. Das Frost is just you could really get the idea of barking. It was ruff, 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 ruff. So, yeah, you wanted to say, why didn't he sing the damn thing? Well, part of the reason was because Mahler made it virtually unsingable, as Bernstein told Christa Ludwig. She said, when he told her, she said, well, I'm getting buried by the orchestra. He said, it's unsingable, who cares, So, yeah, I get it. He was trying, but he could do that. He definitely did that, and it was definitely irritating to some people. But with all that said, he was still an amazingly great singer, and although he tried to own Die Winterreise, nobody owns Die Winterreise. Nobody! So anyway, let's start at the beginning. Here we go. This isn't the absolute beginning. There was one recording, I don't know, from the dawn of time, but this is his earliest major label recording, I think, of Die Winterreise. This was recorded in 1955. Well, that's pretty early, with Gerald Moore, the incomparable Gerald Moore, the ultimate accompanist for Lieder people. And it's on EMI, and the voice is young, and it's fresh, and you can hear him. He doesn't have to do much because he can just sing. You don't have to. When your voice is in great shape, you don't have to worry about. You don't have to resort to artificiality or artfulness, if you want to call it that. But anyway, it's a beautiful, straightforward, well-sung performance by a guy with a very pure, lyrical baritone voice. little bit thin on top, always was. But anyway, there it is, and it's perfectly fine. Next we go to this one. This is the one that a lot of people preferred to my preferred one, which was his Deutsche Grammophon recording with Gerald Moore, which was a little bit later than this one. This is 1966, I think. Yes, 1966. And this is with Jörg Demus, who's a very, very fine accompanist. And it's kind of the one that I think it's a consensus choice, at least it was for GG, because they put it in his original series. And here you feel the beginning of interpretation. Yes, you could actually tell right from the very first line, the very first opening, the very first thing he sings for the first song, because here he just sings it. It's all very straightforward. The dynamics rather level and whatnot. Here he's starting to, shade the vocal line a little bit more with diminuendi and crescendi and things like that. There's more manipulation of the words. And quite often it's very affecting. It really is. It's quite lovely. At other times, you wonder why he's doing what he's doing. I mean, because a sudden diminuendo, it draws attention to what the words are. And sometimes those words are really important, and sometimes they're just, not so important. And you wonder why he does it. The question of, that kind of interpretive nuance, if you want to call it that, is always something that you have to deal with in like the Lieder universe, where it's a big thing to try and let people know things are terribly important by doing things to the text, to the vocal line that make it sound terribly, terribly significant, even if the words are completely meaningless. Something to keep in mind. Anyway, but this is a very beautiful performance. It really is. And I understand fully people who prefer it to the later Gerald Moore or to the earlier one or whatever. It's very, very good. And, they had to pick one, so that's the one they picked, and I get it. Then, very late in his career, which was, let's see, what is this? 1990. Oh, my God. He did this one on Sony with Murray Perahia. Look, he's all like white-haired and kind of like aged. And boy, could you hear the difference. His voice is just shot. I mean, it's gone. It's not that he can't sing. He does. He has the notes. I mean, he's a little wobbly, a little bit tremulous in places, thin sounding. And, it's all artistry. Oh, so much artistry. He's making up for the fact that he just doesn't have a fulsome tone by doing things. Now, some people, again, will find that the ultimate in Lieder profundity. It's the Elizabeth Schwarzkopf school, as we say, and she was very open about it. I mean, she talked about recording sessions of Hugo Wolf songs. Every note should have its own emphasis and shading, and it's intolerable, I think. But others think it's just the ultimate in expressivity. Well, he's using what he has. Let's put it that way, as cleverly as he knows how. And Perahia is an absolutely fabulous accompanist. He's wonderful. But let's face it, you're always better off having a gorgeous voice. Anna Russell, again, Anna Russell, who did a fabulous interpretation of the German Lied. Remember? Schlumpf ist meine gepitzigen Schnitz. Schlumpf, her German Lied. It was fabulous. But she also said that, in order to be an opera singer, what you need first and foremost, or a singer at all, is a beautiful voice. All the rest of it can be fed into you, she said, in one way or another, but without the voice, you're nowhere. Well, his voice was going. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. And it's interesting to hear the comparisons, because there is so much more. What's left when the voice is shot is the stuff he does. And it's louder and it's softer, and he's trying to find ways to get around his obvious hurdles. And whether he does or not is really up to you. So there you have it, my friends. I mean, just a quick little Fischer-Dieskau Winterreise-thon, just so you can get a sense of one of the really great singers and one of the great interpreters of this particular work and of Schubert more generally. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.